Life slowly returned to normal in the days that followed, but something inside her had changed. She noticed people more. She paid attention to small acts of kindness. She remembered how much trust it had taken to follow someone into the darkness. The children, too, carried the memory. Sometimes they spoke about the storm, about the walk, about the warm place in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes they asked if they would ever see that man again. The mother always said she did not know, but she hoped he was well. The night of snow, darkness, and fear became a story they would tell quietly, a reminder of how fragile life can be and how powerful kindness truly is. Even years later, whenever winter storms arrived, the mother remembered that night. She remembered the cold and the fear, but more than that, she remembered the moment hope appeared, steady and calm, asking her to follow. And every time she remembered, she felt thankful, not just for survival, but for the reminder that even in the darkest moments, humanity can still shine. Life did not pause after that night. It moved forward, slowly at first, then with more confidence as days turned into weeks. Still, the memory of the storm stayed close, like a quiet shadow that followed the mother everywhere she went. It showed up in small moments, often when she least expected it. The first time she drove again in winter weather, her hands tightened around the steering wheel just like they had that night. Every sound of wind made her alert. Every patch of snow on the road demanded her full attention. The children noticed it too. They became quieter during drives, watching her face, reading her reactions. She tried to hide her fear, but some feelings are hard to hide from those who know you best. She began to prepare differently after that. For any long drive, she checked the weather again and again. She packed extra blankets, water, food, and warm clothes, even for short trips. It was not panic, it was awareness. She had learned how quickly normal plans could turn into danger. At night, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep, her thoughts often returned to the walk through the snow. She remembered the sound of her own breathing loud in her ears. She remembered how the darkness felt alive, how fear sat heavy in her chest. But she also remembered something else just as clearly. She remembered the calm voice ahead of her, guiding her forward when she felt like she could not take another step. That memory stayed with her, shaping the way she saw people. She found herself looking at strangers differently now. She wondered about the lives they lived, the quiet courage they might carry without anyone knowing. She realized that strength does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it simply shows up when needed most. The children changed too, each in their own way. One became more careful, asking questions about safety and planning. Another became more thoughtful, noticing when others seemed uncomfortable or afraid. The youngest grew more attached, often wanting reassurance that everything would be okay. The mother did not push these changes away. She understood them. She felt them too. Sometimes, on cold evenings, the children asked her to tell the story again. They wanted to hear how the night began, how the car got stuck, how the storm sounded. She told it honestly but gently. She focused on the parts that mattered most. She talked about staying together. She talked about listening. She talked about help arriving when it felt impossible. She never told the story to scare them. She told it to remind them that fear can be faced and that kindness can appear in unexpected forms. The mother often thought about the man who helped them. She wondered what his life was like. She wondered if he ever thought about that night, or if it was just another moment among many acts of quiet help. She wished she could thank him again, properly, with more than words spoken in exhaustion and shock. She tried to look for him once, asking local workers and people familiar with the area, but she never found a clear answer. Part of her was disappointed, but another part understood. Some people are meant to pass through your life briefly, leaving a deep mark without staying. Instead of searching endlessly, she chose to honor what he had done in another way. She paid closer attention to people around her. When she saw someone struggling, she tried to help if she could. Sometimes it was something small, like offering a warm drink or a listening ear. Sometimes it was more like stepping in when someone felt lost or overwhelmed. She did not do this because she felt she owed the world something. She did it because she understood now how powerful small acts could be. Winter came again the following year. Snow covered the ground just as thickly, and storms rolled in just as fiercely. But this time, the mother felt different. She respected the season more, she prepared for it. And when storms arrived, she stayed home when she could, choosing safety over convenience. One evening, as snow fell quietly outside, the power went out in the neighborhood. The house went dark, and the children grew uneasy. The mother lit candles and gathered them close, just like she had in the car that night. She spoke calmly, reminding them they were safe. They listened, trusting her. As they sat together, wrapped in blankets, she realized something important. That night in the storm had not only tested her fear, it had shown her her own strength. She had not given up. She had not frozen in place. She had made a choice. Even when every option felt terrifying, that realization stayed with her. Months later, during a school event, the children were asked to talk about something that changed them. One of them spoke quietly about a night when they were very cold and afraid, and how someone helped them. The room was silent as they spoke. The mother listened from the back. Her eyes filling with tears, she saw how the experience had become part of their understanding of the world, not as a source of fear, but as a lesson about trust, courage, and kindness. Life continued, full of normal worries and ordinary joys. There were busy mornings, tired evenings, small arguments, and laughter around the table. But woven through it all was a deeper sense of gratitude. The mother noticed it in herself every time she tucked the children into bed. She noticed it when she felt the warmth of the house on cold nights. She no longer took those moments for granted. Years passed, the children grew taller. Their voices changed. Their questions became more complex. But the memory of that night remained clear, untouched by time. It had become part of their family's story. Something shared quietly but deeply. One winter afternoon, while driving on a different road, the mother saw a car pulled over on the side, stuck in the snow. She slowed down, her heart beating faster. She looked at her children, now older, sitting beside her. She pulled over. Together. They stepped out into the cold and checked on the people inside the other car. They offered warmth, help, and calm words. It was not dramatic, did not make headlines. But it mattered. As they drove away later, the children were quiet. Then one of them smiled and said they were glad they stopped. The mother smiled too, feeling a quiet sense of rightness settle inside her. That night, she lay in bed. She thought again of the storm, the darkness, and the fear. She thought of the moment a stranger stepped out of the snow and changed everything. She understood now that stories like that do not truly end, continue, passed from one act of kindness to another, shaping people in ways they may never fully see. The night that once felt like the end had become a beginning of awareness, a beginning of compassion, a beginning of quiet strength. And whenever winter returned, with all its cold and uncertainty, the mother faced it with respect. Preparation and a deep belief that even in the harshest conditions, humanity could still find its way forward. That belief stayed with her, steady and warm, long after the snow had melted. The years that followed carried the family forward into a life that looked ordinary from the outside. School mornings were rushed. Evenings were filled with homework, meals, and quiet moments on the couch. Seasons changed, and winter always came back, steady and patient. But the memory of that one night never faded. It lived beneath the surface, shaping choices, reactions, and the way they understood the world. The mother noticed that she listened more now, not just to her children, but to people around her. She paid attention to tone, to pauses, to the things people did not say out loud. Fear, she had learned, often hides behind silence. And sometimes, all a person needs is to be seen. The children grew into young adults with their own paths, but each carried something from that night. One developed a strong sense of responsibility, always prepared, always thinking ahead. Another learned patience, understanding that not everything can be controlled, but choices still matter. The youngest carried a deep sense of empathy, quick to notice when someone felt left out or afraid. They did not talk about the storm every day. Sometimes months passed without it being mentioned at all. But when heavy snow fell, or when news stories showed winter emergencies, the memory returned quietly, like a shared glance across the room. One winter evening, long after the children had grown, the mother sat alone by the window watching snow fall. The world outside looked calm, almost gentle. Street lights reflected softly on the white ground. It was hard to believe that snow could ever be dangerous. Her thoughts drifted back to that night again, not with fear, but with reflection. She realized how close she had been to giving in to panic. The night began like any other long drive, quiet and uneventful. But it slowly turned into something none of them would ever forget. A mother was traveling with her children through a remote area, where the road stretched endlessly between forests and open land. Winter had already taken control of everything. Snow covered the ground, the trees, and the distant hills. The sky was dark, heavy, and silent, as if it was holding its breath. The headlights of the car cut through the falling snow, but only just enough to show a few feet ahead. The mother kept both hands tightly on the steering wheel. Her eyes stayed focused on the road, though it was becoming harder to see. Snowflakes were falling faster now, thick and heavy, sticking to the windshield even though the wipers worked non-stop. The road signs were buried under snow, and the lane markings had completely disappeared. Everything looked the same in every direction, white, dark, and endless. In the back seat, the children were wrapped in coats and blankets. At first, they had been talking and laughing quietly, tired from the long day. Now their voices had faded. One of them stared out the window, watching the snow rush past, while another leaned against the seat, half asleep. The youngest shifted uncomfortably, pulling the blanket closer. Feeling the cold slowly creep in despite the heater running, the mother tried to stay calm. She told herself she had driven through snow before. She reminded herself that everything would be fine if she stayed careful and alert. Still, a small knot of fear had begun to form in her chest. The road felt too empty. No other cars had passed for a long time. Her phone signal had disappeared miles back, leaving only a blank screen and a weak battery. The wind suddenly grew stronger. It pushed against the car, making it sway slightly. Snow blew across the road in thick waves, hiding what little path she could see. She slowed down, barely moving now, afraid of sliding or hitting something hidden beneath the snow. Her breath grew shallow, though she tried to control it so the children would not notice. Then it happened. The car jerked sharply to one side. The tires spun uselessly, unable to grip the icy road. She tried to correct the steering, but it was too late. The car slid off the road and came to a sudden stop, sinking into deep snow with a dull, heavy thud. Everything went silent, except for the wind howling outside. For a moment, no one spoke. The mother's heart pounded loudly in her chest. Her hands were shaking as she tried to move the gear and press the gas. The tires spun again, spraying snow, but going nowhere. She tried once more, then stopped, realizing it was useless. The car was stuck. A small voice broke the silence from the back seat, asking what was wrong. The mother turned slightly, forcing a calm expression onto her face. She said they had only slid a little and that everything would be okay. Her voice sounded steady, but inside she felt anything but calm. She turned the engine off to save fuel. The sudden quiet made the situation feel even more serious. Without the sound of the engine, the cold felt closer, more real. She checked her phone again, hoping for a signal, but there was nothing. No bars, no messages. No way to call for help. Outside, the storm continued to grow. Snow piled up against the sides of the car, and the wind made strange sounds as it passed through the trees nearby. The darkness felt thick, pressing in from all directions. The mother looked around, trying to recognize anything familiar, but the landscape offered no comfort. Just endless snow and shadow. Minutes passed slowly. The children began to feel uneasy. One asked how long they would be there. Another asked if someone would come to help. The mother answered each question gently, telling them they would wait a little and think of a plan. She wrapped her coat tighter and checked on each child, making sure they were warm enough. She knew staying calm was important. Panic would only make things worse. Still, her thoughts raced. She wondered how far they were from the nearest town, if anyone even traveled this road at night, especially in such weather. She wondered how cold it would get if the heater stayed off too long. She turned the engine on for a short time to warm the car, then turned it off again to save fuel. The children huddled together, sharing warmth. The mother sat still, listening to the storm, counting the seconds, trying to keep fear from taking over. As time passed, the cold began to settle deep into their bones. The windows slowly fogged from their breathing. The youngest child started to cry softly, saying their hands were cold. The mother rubbed their hands and whispered comforting words, though her own fingers were stiff and numb. The darkness outside felt endless. There were no lights, no signs of life, nothing to show that help was nearby. The mother thought about getting out of the car to look around, but the idea scared her. She did not know which direction to go. The snow was deep and the wind was strong. Leaving the car could mean getting lost. She looked at the children again. Their faces showed fear now, even though they tried to be brave. That sight hurt her more than the cold. She felt responsible for everything, for their safety, their fear, their hope. She promised herself she would do whatever it took to protect them. Another long stretch of time passed. The storm showed no signs of slowing down. The mother checked her phone once more, though she already knew the result. The battery was nearly gone. She placed it back in her pocket, feeling a deep sense of isolation. Her thoughts drifted to the idea that maybe someone would pass by. Maybe another driver would see their car, notice the headlights reflecting off the snow. She kept the hazard lights on, hoping the blinking lights might be visible through the storm. The wind suddenly changed direction, hitting the car harder than before. Snow slammed against the windows, making it difficult to see even a few inches outside. The children clung to each other. The mother reached back, touching their shoulders, letting them know she was there. Fear was no longer just a feeling. It was something heavy and real, sitting in the car with them. The cold, the darkness, the silence between gusts of wind, all of it worked together to make the situation feel hopeless. The mother took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a brief moment. She focused on staying strong. She told herself that people survived worse situations. She reminded herself that kindness and help sometimes appeared when least expected. She opened her eyes and stared out into the storm again, watching the snow fall endlessly. Unaware that this was only the beginning of a night that would change everything, the cold grew worse as the night dragged on. Inside the car, the air felt heavy and still, broken only by the sound of the wind outside. The mother kept checking the children, rubbing their arms, adjusting their blankets, trying to keep warmth where she could. She smiled for them, but her face felt stiff. Her thoughts were full of worry. She turned the engine on again for a few minutes. Warm air slowly flowed through the vents, bringing short relief. The children sighed softly and leaned closer together, but she knew she could not keep the engine running for long. Fuel was limited, and she did not know how many hours they might be stuck there. When she turned the engine off again, the quiet returned, deeper and more frightening than before. Time lost its meaning. Minutes felt like hours. The snow outside continued to fall without pause, covering the car more and more. The hazard lights blinked steadily, their soft glow reflecting off the white ground. The mother hoped someone, anyone, would see them. The children began asking more questions. They asked if it was still night. They asked if home was far away. One of them asked if they were going to be okay. Each question felt like a weight on the mother's chest. She answered gently, telling them they were safe for now, that she was there, that they would get through this together. Her own body was starting to feel the cold more strongly. Her feet were numb, and her hands felt slow and clumsy. She kept moving them, afraid of letting them go still. She reminded herself to stay alert, to keep her mind active. Falling asleep was not an option. She considered stepping outside again. Maybe she could clear snow from around the tires, or see if the road was close enough to walk. But when she looked through the window, the storm erased any sense of direction. The darkness beyond the headlights looked endless. She imagined stepping out and losing sight of the car within seconds. That thought alone stopped her. The children grew quieter. Fear had drained their energy. One rested their head against the window, watching the snow. Another held a small toy tightly, as if it could protect them. The youngest leaned against the mother's arm, breathing softly. The mother felt a sharp ache in her chest. She blamed herself for choosing this road, for not stopping earlier, for believing they could make it through before the storm became too strong. Regret whispered in her mind, but she pushed it away. Regret would not help now. She focused instead on small tasks. She checked the mirrors. She adjusted the blankets again. She spoke softly to the children, telling them stories from memory, anything to keep them distracted and calm. Her voice echoed strangely in the small space, but it helped. Outside, the wind howled louder, rattling the car slightly. Snow pressed against the doors. The mother wondered how cold it had become. She wondered if help would come before morning. The idea of waiting until daylight felt impossible. At one point, she thought she heard a sound beyond the wind. Her heart jumped. She leaned forward, straining to listen. But it was only the storm shifting, playing tricks on her tired mind. The disappointment cut deep. Her phone vibrated once in her pocket, startling her. She pulled it out quickly, hope rising for a brief moment. But the screen only showed a low battery warning before going dark completely. The phone shut off, leaving her fully cut off from the world. The sense of isolation became overwhelming. It felt as if they were the only people left in the world, trapped in a frozen silence. The mother swallowed hard, fighting the urge to cry. She could not afford to break down. Not in front of the children. She pulled them closer, wrapping one arm around them as best as she could. She told them to keep their hands inside their sleeves, to breathe slowly, to stay close. They listened, trusting her completely. That trust both strengthened and frightened her. The cold continued to creep in. The windows frosted at the edges. The mother could see her breath now, faint clouds forming in the air. She knew this was dangerous. She tried to think clearly, to remember advice she had heard about staying warm in winter emergencies. She turned the engine on once more. Just for a short while. The car came alive again, shaking slightly. Warmth returned slowly, but she noticed the fuel gauge dropping. Her heart sank. She turned it off again sooner than she wanted to. The youngest child began shivering, their teeth clicking softly. The mother rubbed their back and held them close. She whispered reassuring words, though fear tightened her throat. She wondered how long a small body could handle such cold. The storm outside showed no mercy. Snow continued to fall, thick and heavy. The road, if it was even there anymore, was completely hidden. The car felt buried, as if the world was trying to swallow it whole. The mother closed her eyes for a moment and took a slow breath. She thought about the strength she had found in difficult moments before. She thought about how love often pushed people to do things they never believed they could do. She knew she might have to make a hard choice soon. She looked out into the darkness again, searching for any sign of movement, any break in the endless white. Her eyes burned from staring, but she refused to stop. Then, faintly, through the storm, she saw something that did not belong to the snow or the wind. A shape. A movement. At first she thought it was her imagination again. Her heart raced as she watched closely. The shape appeared again, closer this time. It moved steadily, not like drifting snow. It looked like a person walking. Her breath caught. Fear and hope collided inside her. Someone was out there, walking through the storm, heading in their direction. She did not know who it was or why they were there, but for the first time that night, the darkness did not feel completely empty. She sat up straighter, staring through the windshield, waiting to see if the figure would disappear or come closer. The shape outside became clearer with each passing second. The mother leaned forward, her hands gripping the steering wheel, even though the car was not moving. Her heart beat so loudly she was sure the children could hear it. The figure moved slowly, carefully, pushing through the deep snow as if used to the harsh weather. The children noticed it too. One of them whispered that someone was coming. The youngest clutched the mother's coat tighter. Fear returned quickly, sharp and sudden. Being stranded was terrifying, but the unknown could be just as frightening. The mother forced herself to stay calm. She turned the hazard lights off and then on again, hoping the blinking light would make them more visible. The figure paused for a moment, then continued walking toward the car. That small response told her they had been seen. As the person came closer, the headlights revealed more detail. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a thick winter jacket and boots packed with snow. His face was partly covered, but his posture was relaxed, not rushed or aggressive. He raised one hand slowly, a simple gesture meant to show he meant no harm. Still, the mother's instincts told her to be careful. She cracked the window just enough to speak, keeping the doors locked. Cold air rushed inside immediately, biting at her face. The man spoke in a calm, steady voice. He asked if they were okay and said he noticed the hazard lights from a distance. His tone was gentle, almost reassuring, like someone used to helping others in difficult situations. The mother answered carefully. She explained that the car had slid off the road and that they were stuck. She mentioned the children and the cold. Her voice shook despite her effort to stay steady. The man nodded, listening closely. He told her he lived nearby and often walked this road during storms to check for stranded drivers. He said the weather was getting worse, and staying in the car for much longer could be dangerous. The children stared at him through the window, their eyes wide. They did not speak, but they listened carefully. The mother could feel their fear and hope mixed together. She asked him how far help was. He pointed into the darkness and said there was a warm place not too far away. He explained that emergency services had trouble reaching this road during heavy snow. But shelter was close. Trust did not come easily. Every warning she had ever heard echoed in her mind. But the cold was winning, and the children were shivering again. She studied the man's face, his body language, the way he spoke without pressure or anger. Everything about him felt steady. She asked a few more questions. He answered each one patiently. He did not rush her. He did not raise his voice. That patience mattered more than he probably knew. Finally, he said the words that would change everything. He told her that if she trusted him, they should leave the car and follow him now. Before the storm became impossible to walk through, the car felt suddenly very small and very unsafe. The mother looked back at the children. Their faces were pale, their lips slightly blue from the cold. Staying no longer felt like an option. She took a deep breath and made a decision that frightened her more than anything else that night. She unlocked the doors. Cold air rushed in as they stepped outside. The wind hit them hard, stealing their breath. Snow reached their knees, making each step difficult. The man moved ahead, breaking a path through the snow, turning back often to make sure they were following. The mother held the children close, one hand gripping each small arm. She moved slowly, carefully, afraid of slipping. Her legs felt heavy, but adrenaline pushed her forward. The man spoke often as they walked. He told them to keep their heads down, to step where he stepped, to stop if they felt tired. His voice cut through the wind, giving them something solid to focus on. The darkness was thick, but the man seemed to know exactly where he was going. He never hesitated. That confidence gave the mother a small sense of relief. Snowflakes stung their faces. The youngest child stumbled once, and the man immediately stopped, turning back to help steady them. That simple act eased some of the fear gripping the mother's chest. They walked slowly, step by step, through the storm. Time seemed to stretch again, but this time there was movement, purpose. Each step felt like a small victory. The mother's lungs burned from the cold air. Her legs ached, but she did not complain. She focused only on moving forward, on keeping the children close, on trusting the path ahead. At one point she looked back and could no longer see the car. Panic surged briefly, but she forced it down. Going back was no longer possible. The man glanced over his shoulder and noticed her fear. He told her they were close. His voice was steady, sure. She chose to believe him. The wind began to ease slightly, or maybe they were just shielded by trees now. The storm still raged, but it felt less open, less endless. The children grew quieter, their energy nearly gone. The mother adjusted her grip, lifting the youngest slightly when their steps slowed. Finally, through the snow and darkness, a faint light appeared ahead. It was small, but it was real. The mother felt tears sting her eyes. They kept moving toward it, hope growing with every step. Unaware that this night would stay with them forever, the light ahead did not look real at first. It was small and weak, almost lost in the falling snow. The mother blinked several times, afraid it might disappear if she looked away. But it stayed there, steady and warm against the cold darkness. Each step toward it made her heart beat faster, not from fear this time, but from hope. The man slowed his pace as they got closer, making sure the children could keep up. He spoke softly, telling them they were doing well, telling them to focus on the light. His voice sounded tired now, but it never lost its calm. That calm felt like a hand guiding them forward. The wind was still strong, but the trees around them blocked some of it. Snow no longer hit their faces as hard. The mother felt her shoulders relax just a little, though her body still ached from the cold and effort. Her legs felt heavy, as if they might give out at any moment, but she kept moving. The children were nearly silent. Their energy was almost gone. One leaned fully against the mother, trusting her to keep them upright. Another dragged their feet, lifting them slowly from the deep snow. The mother whispered encouragement, telling them they were close, telling them to keep going just a little longer as they came closer. The light revealed a small building set back from the road. It was simple and worn, with snow piled high around its walls. Smoke rose gently from a pipe above the roof, barely visible against the dark sky. That small detail made the mother's chest tighten with relief. Warmth was inside. Safety was inside. The man reached the door first and pushed it open. Warm air spilled out, wrapping around them like a blanket. The smell of heat and something faintly familiar filled the air. The mother nearly cried at the sudden change. Inside, the space was modest but welcoming. A heater hummed steadily in the corner. A table and a few chairs stood nearby. The walls were plain but clean. The man stepped aside and motioned for them to come in quickly. The mother guided the children inside one by one. As soon as the door closed behind them, the sound of the storm faded into a distant roar. The contrast felt unreal, like stepping into another world. The children sank onto the chairs and floor, too tired to stand. Their cheeks were red from the cold, their hands stiff and pale. The mother knelt in front of them, rubbing their arms, checking their faces, making sure they were breathing normally. Relief washed over her in waves. The man brought extra blankets from another room and wrapped them around the children. He moved with purpose, as if he had done this before. He did not ask unnecessary questions. He focused only on what mattered. The mother thanked him again and again, her voice breaking despite her effort to stay composed. Words did not feel big enough for what she was feeling. Gratitude, shock, and exhaustion all tangled together inside her. The man told her to let the children warm up slowly. He explained that sudden heat could be uncomfortable after extreme cold. His tone was gentle, careful. He placed cups of warm water nearby, reminding them to take small sips. The mother followed every instruction closely. She watched the children's color slowly return. Their breathing steadied. One of them finally spoke, asking if they were safe now. The mother nodded, unable to speak for a moment. She sat down heavily, realizing how tired she was. Her hands trembled as the warmth reached deep into her muscles. Only now did she feel how close she had been to collapsing. The man sat across from them, giving them space, but staying nearby. He explained that storms like this were dangerous, and that many people underestimated how quickly conditions could turn. He said he had seen cars slide off the road before and always tried to check the area when snow grew heavy. The mother listened quietly. She thought about how easily this night could have ended differently. The thought made her shiver even in the warmth. After some time, the man asked if anyone felt dizzy or sick. The children shook their heads weakly. The mother said they were tired and cold, but otherwise okay. He nodded and said that was expected. He stepped outside briefly, checking the storm, then returned, brushing snow from his jacket. He said the road was completely blocked now and that leaving again would not be safe until morning. The mother agreed immediately. The idea of stepping back into the storm filled her with dread. The man offered them a place to rest for the night. It was not fancy, but it was warm and safe. The mother accepted without hesitation. The children were helped onto a small couch and padded floor space with blankets layered thickly beneath them. They curled up together, exhaustion finally winning. Within minutes, their eyes closed. The mother watched them sleep, their faces soft and peaceful. Tears slipped down her cheeks silently. She brushed them away quickly, not wanting to disturb the quiet moment. She turned to the man and thanked him again, more softly this time. She told him she did not know what they would have done without him. Her voice shook with emotion she could no longer hide. He listened and simply nodded. He said that sometimes people cross paths for a reason, and that helping each other was the right thing to do. There was no pride in his voice, no need for praise. The mother wrapped a blanket around herself and sat back, her body finally beginning to rest. The storm outside continued, but it no longer felt threatening. The walls around them felt strong enough to hold back the night. As the hours passed, the heater hummed steadily. The man stayed awake for a while, keeping watch, checking on the children, making sure the warmth stayed even. Eventually, the mother's eyes grew heavy, before sleep claimed her. She thought about the fear they had felt in the car, the darkness, the cold, and how close everything had come to ending badly. She also thought about the quiet strength of a stranger, who had walked through a storm without hesitation. The night that began with fear slowly turned into one of reflection and gratitude. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside, there was warmth, safety, and the steady sound of breathing that told her they had made it through. She closed her eyes, holding on to that feeling, knowing that when morning came, life would move forward, but this night would never be forgotten. Morning did not arrive suddenly. It came slowly, quietly, as if the world itself was tired after the long night. The storm outside had softened, though snow still fell lightly, covering everything in a fresh white layer. Inside the small building, the air remained warm and calm. The steady hum of the heater continued, a sound that now felt comforting instead of strange. The mother woke first. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then the memories rushed back: the dark road, the stuck car, the cold, the fear, and the long walk through the storm. Her heart tightened briefly, but then she looked around and saw the children sleeping peacefully nearby. Their faces were relaxed, their breathing slow and even. Relief washed over her again, just as strong as it had the night before. She sat up slowly, careful not to make noise. Her body felt sore, every muscle reminding her of the effort it had taken to survive the night. But she was alive. They all were. That thought alone gave her strength. The man was already awake. He stood near the small window, looking outside, his back turned. He seemed thoughtful, quiet, as if he was used to mornings like this. When he noticed her awake, he turned and gave a small nod. He told her the storm had passed its worst. The road was still covered, but daylight made everything safer. He said help would be able to reach them soon. His voice was calm, the same steady tone that had guided them through the night. The mother thanked him again, though she felt the words still were not enough. She asked how she could ever repay him. He shook his head gently and said there was nothing to repay. He said seeing the children safe was enough. The children began to wake one by one. They stretched and rubbed their eyes, confused at first. Then they remembered where they were. One of them smiled softly. Another asked if it was morning. The mother nodded and pulled them close, holding them longer than usual. They were given warm food and something hot to drink. The simple meal tasted better than anything the mother could remember. It tasted like safety. It tasted like another chance. As the children ate, color returned fully to their faces. They spoke more now, their voices lighter. They talked about the snow, about the walk, about how tired they were. They laughed softly at small things, the sound filling the room with life. Later, the man stepped outside again to check the road. The mother watched him through the window, noticing how easily he moved through the snow, how familiar the land seemed to him. She realized how brave he had been to walk alone in such a storm, not knowing what he might find. After some time, distant sounds reached them. The low hum of an engine. Then another. The mother felt her heart lift. Help was coming. Emergency workers arrived carefully, making their way through the snow. They checked on the family, asked questions, and made sure everyone was safe and warm. The mother answered everything honestly. Still feeling slightly unreal, like she was waking from a long, frightening dream, they told her the car would be handled later and that she and the children would be taken somewhere safe. The mother nodded, grateful for their calm and efficiency. As they prepared to leave, the mother turned to the man. She felt a sudden rush of emotion and did not try to hide it. She told him that what he had done would stay with her forever. She told him that because of him, her children were alive. The man listened quietly. He did not seem uncomfortable or proud. He simply said that anyone would have done the same. But the mother knew that was not true. Not everyone would have walked into a storm for strangers. The children hugged him, one after another. Their small arms wrapped around him, holding on tightly. He smiled then, a real smile, warm and gentle. Soon it was time to go. The mother gathered their few belongings and wrapped the children in their coats. Before stepping outside, she took one last look around the room that had kept them safe. It would always mean something to her. Outside, daylight revealed how harsh the night had truly been. Snow covered everything, thick and deep. The road was barely visible. Seeing it now, the mother felt a shiver run through her. Knowing how close they had come to disaster, as they were guided towards safety, she looked back one last time. The man stood near the doorway, watching quietly. She raised her hand in thanks. He nodded once, then turned back inside. The ride away was quiet. The children leaned against her, already drifting back to sleep. The mother looked out the window, watching the snowy landscape pass by. It looked peaceful now, almost beautiful, hiding the danger it had held hours before. Her thoughts returned again and again to the night, to the fear that had gripped her, to the moment hope appeared in the form of a stranger walking through the snow. She realized how easily fear can change into gratitude when kindness steps in. How easy it would have been to stay frozen in place, waiting for rescue that might never come. And she realized how powerful a single decision had been. The decision to trust. The decision to move. She wondered how many moments in life were like that. Quiet crossroads that did not look important until much later, in the years after. She had faced other challenges. Loss, uncertainty, moments when the future felt unclear. And each time, she remembered the storm. She remembered that even when the path ahead is hidden, moving forward carefully can still lead to safety. The story of that night began to travel beyond the family, shared gently with friends, neighbors, and sometimes strangers when the moment felt right. It was never shared for attention. It was shared as a reminder. People often listened quietly. Some nodded in understanding. Some wiped away tears. Many said they would never forget it. And the mother hoped they would remember not the fear, but the kindness. One winter, many years later, she received a letter. It was simple, with no return name. Inside was a short message written carefully. It said that sometimes people help without expecting to be remembered. But knowing that the help mattered can still mean something. It said that storms come in many forms and that guiding someone through one is always worth it. There was no signature, no explanation. The mother held the letter for a long time. She did not know for sure who sent it. She did not need to. The message alone felt complete. That night, she placed the letter in a drawer where she kept important things. Not valuables, but memories. Small reminders of moments that shaped her life. As time continued, the world changed in many ways. Technology advanced. People moved faster. Life felt louder. But kindness remained the same. Quiet, simple, powerful. The mother noticed that the children, now adults, carried that lesson forward too. One volunteered during winter months, helping people find shelter and warmth. Another worked in a role that required patience and calm under pressure. The youngest often spoke up for those who felt overlooked. They did not always connect these choices to the storm. But the mother could see the line clearly. One winter, the family gathered together again during a heavy snowfall. They sat close, sharing food and stories. Laughter filled the room. Outside, the snow continued to fall, silent and steady. Someone mentioned the night again, casually this time. There was no fear in the memory now, only gratitude. They talked about how strange it felt that something so frightening had become something meaningful, how something that once felt like the end had shaped so many beginnings. Later that night, after everyone had gone to sleep, the mother stood by the window once more. Snow covered the world just like before, but inside she felt steady. She thought about all the people in the world who were afraid at that very moment. People stuck, lost, unsure of what to do next. She hoped that help would find them too, or that they would find the courage to take the next step forward. She understood now that stories like hers were not rare. They happened every day, quietly without attention. Acts of courage, acts of trust, acts of kindness. The storm that once filled her with fear had given her something lasting, a deeper understanding of humanity, a belief that, even in darkness, light can appear. As the night grew late, she turned away from the window and went to bed, feeling at peace. The snow would melt, winter would pass, but the lesson would remain. Fear may arrive without warning. Darkness may hide the path, but there will always be moments when someone steps forward and says to follow them, and sometimes, one day, you become that person for someone else. Time has a quiet way of softening sharp memories, but it never fully erases the ones that matter most. As years continued to pass, the night of snow, darkness, and fear settled into the mother's life, not as a wound, but as a guide. It shaped how she understood risk, trust, and the fragile space between safety and loss. She noticed that she became more patient with uncertainty. When plans changed or things went wrong, she did not panic the way she once might have. She reminded herself that she had faced worse and survived. That reminder gave her strength in moments when others felt overwhelmed. Winter still carried weight for her, but it was no longer fear alone. It was respect. She respected how quickly nature could remind people of their limits. She taught the same respect to her children, not through warnings, but through calm preparation and quiet awareness. Every winter, she donated warm clothes, blankets, and supplies. Sometimes anonymously, sometimes directly. She never spoke much about why. She only knew that warmth could mean more than comfort. It could mean life. One year, during a particularly harsh winter, news spread about people stranded on roads, shelters filling up, and volunteers struggling to keep up with need. The mother felt something stir inside her. A familiar feeling. Not fear, but responsibility. She began volunteering regularly during the cold months. She helped prepare food, organize supplies, and listen to stories. She met people from all walks of life, each carrying their own storms. Some spoke openly. Others stayed silent, eyes tired but grateful. She learned that fear often looks like anger, that exhaustion often looks like distance, and that kindness, even when small, can break through both. Sometimes, when someone thanked her deeply, she thought of the man who had helped her family. She wondered if he had ever volunteered somewhere like this, or if his kindness had simply been part of who he was. Woven into his everyday life, the children, now grown, joined her when they could. They packed boxes, served meals, and listened. None of them needed to be asked twice. The lesson had already been learned. One evening, after a long day of volunteering, the mother stepped outside into falling snow. The flakes drifted slowly, peaceful and quiet. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. She realized that snow no longer made her chest tighten the way it once had. It still demanded caution, but it no longer controlled her emotions. Fear had been replaced by understanding. That understanding did not come from forgetting the past, but from accepting it. As she grew older, people sometimes asked her how she stayed calm during difficult moments. She never answered with advice. She told stories instead. Not always the full story, just enough to share the truth. She explained that calm is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward even when fear is present. The children carried that message into their own lives. One taught it to others through work and leadership. Another through quiet support and listening. Another through action, stepping in when help was needed. They did not always connect their choices to that night, but the mother saw the connection clearly. One winter afternoon, Years later, the mother found herself driving alone on a long road. Snow began to fall lightly. She slowed down, alert but calm. Her car was well prepared. Her mind was clear. As she drove, she noticed a person walking along the side of the road, struggling against the cold. She hesitated only briefly before pulling over. She offered a ride, warmth, and reassurance. The person accepted, clearly exhausted. As they drove, the person spoke quietly about being lost, about fear, about not knowing what to do next. The mother listened, truly listened. When she dropped them off safely, the person thanked her again and again. She smiled and said it was nothing. But inside she felt something. Complete. She understood then that the kindness she had once received had become something she now carried forward. That realization stayed with her long after the snow melted, as the years continued. The story of that night became something she returned to less often, but it never left her. It was always there, steady and quiet. Reminding her of what mattered, she learned that life does not change in loud moments alone. It changes in quiet decisions, in choosing to help, in choosing to trust, in choosing to move forward. The night of snow, darkness, and fear had once felt like an ending. But it was not. It was a beginning of awareness, a beginning of compassion, a beginning of a life shaped not by fear, but by the understanding that even in the hardest moments, humanity can still find its way. And that understanding stayed with her, steady and warm, like a light in the distance, guiding her through every season that followed.